before you cast on, pre-thread 20 velvet beads onto persimmon yarn, and then you need to push them down towards the ball so that you can cast on the 113 stitches using 3mm needles. So you need to use the thumb method to do this, and that means that you have to estimate the amount of yarn that you need to cast on. So I do this in a very simple way, and that is that I allow about 6 to 7 inches for each 10 stitches that I'm casting on. So allowing for a tail at the beginning, it's then 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, 110 and a little bit there for the 13. Okay, so what I do next is to cast on the first stitch, I wind the yarn around my left thumb in a clockwise direction, and using one needle I go to knit that stitch, taking the yarn around the needle and putting the loop onto the needle there, and then I repeat that for each stitch that I need to cast on. So it's a very simplistic way to cast on, and if you cast on thumb method slightly differently to this, it shouldn't matter. You can stick to your own method, but just adapt what you're doing to what you see I'm doing here. Okay, so it's cast on 11 stitches with the beads kept on the ball side rather than on the tail. So my beads are on my right hand side with my tail that I'm casting on with to the left, and I'm casting on 11 stitches. Okay, now the instruction is to cast on with a bead and then cast on without a bead 4 times. So to cast on with a bead, you do as follows. Put the yarn around your thumb and put your needle through the loop as before, but then you slide a bead up so it's sitting close to the needle. You then put the yarn around the needle to make the loop, but as you put the loop onto the needle, just hold the bead up slightly. I'm doing that with my right index finger, as you close the stitch up, so the stitch closes just behind the bead there. Then it's cast on one stitch without a bead and then repeat of casting on with a bead. So yarn around thumb, slide the bead up, put the yarn around the needle, and as you put the loop onto the needle, just hold that bead up out of the way so the stitch closes up beneath it there. Okay, then a bead, one stitch without, and then one stitch with a bead again. Okay, so that's 4 beads, and then the instruction is to cast on 13 stitches without a bead. So that's just 13 plain stitches. That's 2. Okay. Okay, now it's cast on 1 stitch with a bead and 1 stitch without a bead 4 times again. So yarn around my thumb in a clockwise direction, slide the bead up so it's sitting against the needle, yarn around the needle, and then just lift the bead slightly up in the air so that the stitch closes behind it there, just underneath it. Okay, so that's the last bead of that next set. Now you repeat that as per the pattern instructions until you have cast on a total of 113 stitches, and then you're ready to begin row 1 with the right side facing. Now I'm ready to begin row 1 with right side facing. So the first instruction is to knit 2 stitches. Then the instruction is to cast off the next 4 stitches. So that's just an ordinary straightforward cast off, working the stitches knitwise. So that's the first stitch cast off. The second stitch cast off. The third. And the fourth, and this actually leaves 1 stitch here on my right hand needle. The next instruction is to knit 4 stitches, so I knit a further 4 stitches, which then leaves, when I've completed that bit, 5 stitches after my cast off stitches. Then you're asked to cast off the next 7 stitches, again knitwise, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, which again leaves 1 stitch on my right hand needle. And then to complete the information, the instruction which is inside the bracket, it's knit 4, which as previously will leave me, after I've knitted 4 stitches, with 5 stitches in total after my last casting off. And you repeat this all the way along the row until you have completed row 1. Now I'm ready to begin row 2 with wrong side facing. So the first instruction is to knit 2, and then I'm going to cast on 4 stitches above where I cast off the stitches on the previous row. So to do this, I turn the work so that the right side is facing, and I cast on using the cable method, which is to put the tip of the right hand needle between the first and second stitches on the left hand needle. Take the yarn around the needle and bring the new loop through, and then put the new stitch onto the left hand needle. I'm repeating this 4 times to cast on 4 stitches. When I cast on the 4th stitch, which is the final stitch in this set, to keep the top of the buttonhole here nice and neat, bring the yarn forward between the needles and hold it down so that you can then put the stitch, that last stitch, onto the left hand needle, and that will keep that upper edge there nice and neat. You then turn the work so the wrong side is facing again, and the instruction is to knit 5. After knitting 5 stitches, you're instructed to turn the work again and to cast on 3 stitches. So again, using the cable method, it's tip of the right hand needle between the first and second stitches on the left hand needle. Take the yarn around the needle and bring the new loop through. Put the new stitch onto the left hand needle and repeat that twice more. But before we put the 3rd stitch on the left hand needle, I'm going to bring the yarn forward again and then slip that 3rd and final stitch onto the left hand needle before turning the work so the wrong side is facing again, and knitting 5 stitches. And you repeat this all along the row, casting on stitches where instructed in the pattern until you have completed row 2.